Welcome to the McKinnis house. I am Sarah Fishel, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make your Thanksgiving noodles. I've got a lot of flour here in the bowl, and I'm going to make a deep well. That means putting the flour to the side, and we're going to put our whole eggs in the bottom, and then I made a white cake over the weekend for the children, and I have some leftover egg yolks. I'm going to add a portion of those to my whole eggs to make the noodles a little bit richer. You don't want to add too many of the egg yolks because you can get your dough a little too stiff. So I'm going to go ahead and crack these eggs into the flour. And there we go. I'm going to try not to put any egg shells in my... You see how rich these eggs are, because my chickens get to free range, and so their egg yolks are just super orange, and that comes from being out in the sunshine so much. And the chickens are laying really well right now, so I can make up quite a few noodles at one time, and I will simply dry them as I cut them up, and then I will store them down in the cold cellar. And that way I'll have noodles for quite some time through the winter just by drying them ahead of time. So I'm going to add about half of these egg yolks to my whole eggs. And then I'm going to add some salt and pepper because that helps to preserve them. And I have to make a lot of noodles because sometimes the kids even like to come in and eat the noodles raw. But we have some old chickens, and so we'll be butchering those, and we'll be making chicken and noodles for supper tonight. But you can see I'm just going to whisk the egg yolks around, mix them up with the salt really good and the flour until I get a really stiff dough. And so you'll just keep whipping this until all of it is worked in. Then you'll pour some of the flour onto the table, and you'll finish working the rest of the flour in on the table before you roll it out. I usually roll the dough out, let it dry for a little bit, and then roll it up into logs and cut it thin, and that's the way I let it dry. So you can see where it's starting to get thicker. So we're just going to keep working that. I think it's about ready to put out onto the table and work the rest of the flour in it. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of this flour out here on the table. And then we're going to put our egg mixture right in the center of that. And if I need extra flour, I can get flour from there. And we're going to knead this with our hands. So we're just kneading the flour into the egg yolk and flour mixture that we've already whisked together. And we're just going to work it till it's almost dry, and you can tell when it's almost ready to roll. But this is just kind of like kneading bread dough. So noodles are very easy to make. They don't take a lot of work, and they're definitely yummy when they're done. So you can see this is getting kind of almost like your bread dough. It's not too sticky now, so I think we're ready to start rolling. I'm going to divide it in half just so I don't have to roll as much out, and I like to roll mine almost paper thin. So I'm going to put half of this back into here and then swish my dough around a little bit. Take my rolling pin and start rolling. And you want to roll it in all directions, make a nice kind of round. But you can see I'm rolling it flat. Then every so often, check to make sure that you still have flour under your dough so that it doesn't stick to your table. There you go. So now it's getting pretty thin, so we'll check it again. Add a little more more flour there. Now, if you don't have enough flour on your table and it gets sticky, just take a spatula and kind of scrape it, pat it back together, roll it down. And like I said, I will leave this usually lay here on the table for about 30 minutes to dry. But I'm going to cut off a section of it right now so that you can see the rest of the process. So once this is dried, I will cut it into quarters. And I'll take those quarters and I'll make sure they've got plenty of flour on them. And I'll stack just 2 of them. And then I'll roll them in a roll. Now, when they've dried for 30 minutes, they're easier to cut and they don't stick together. So once I have my roll, then I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to slice them very thin. You can see right now, because I didn't dry them, they're a little sticky, and they will take a little longer to cook once you've dried them. Once they've been cut, you're just going to unroll them, and you're going to let them dry just like the ones that we already have drying down here. Once they're dried, you can store them in the cold cellar. Now, if I want to cook with these right now, I merely have to have a chicken broth with some salt and some pepper and some seasoning already heated to a boil on the stove. You have to have your broth boiling before you drop your noodles in, because if it is not boiling, your noodles will disintegrate. They will disappear in your cold broth. But if it's boiling nicely, just like this, you can drop them in there and you will have chicken and noodles for supper. And doesn't that look yummy? Thanks for joining us again.